Welcome to Relive It Live from Nathan's Basement. In this edition, we're going to be covering Album 1101. Welcome to Relive It Live from Nathan's Basement. This is Nathan's Basement, and I am Nathan. And this video series is going to cover the history of Up With People albums. In honor of our missed reunion this year, and in celebration of J. Blanton Belk's upcoming autobiography, we're going to do this series to touch a little bit about the musical history that we've released to the world. And we're starting this episode with Sing Out, the musical, Volume 1101. So this is the very first album that Up With People released. So this is the soundtrack to a television special that was done on Up With People, the Sing Out musical. Up With People started in the summer of '65. This was recorded in very early November of '65. The television special was released the following May. Not exactly sure when the album hit the streets, but by the time that we got to January of '67, so a little after we released, a little over a year, we had sold 750,000 copies of this album. Enough that Up With People founded its own record label to help support sales, right? That's a lot of albums, 750,000. 750,000 of them had cleared, and we continued to reprint it for years after that, right? This was recorded at Radio Recorder Studio in LA, home of a lot of the great musical sessions that were done. B.B. King, Louis Armstrong, Elvis, Pat Boone, Bing Crosby, huge names all recorded there. So it was a pretty big deal for us to be able to go in there, get a good recording studio, and get this out to the world. So this was sponsored by a man named Patrick Frawley. Patrick Frawley was the president, the head of the Schick Safety Razor Company, which was the main sponsor of this and the special, which was released on television in syndication, and you can sometimes find it on eBay. This is the DVD of that television special. It was sold into syndication, which means it did not go onto a network. Any television station could show it anytime they wanted, and so it was seen all over the place, constantly across America. So with that, we had a lot of connections, right? So there's three famous faces on the front of this album. There's John Wayne, there's Pat Boone, and there's Walt Disney. And how did we get those people on our album to talk about how important Up With People is? Well, it goes back to Patrick Frawley again. He had a dinner party at his house one night, invited Mr. Belk and Betty Belk to come out. And they sat there at a table with Baron Hilton and his family. They became lifelong friends, by the way. The Hiltons and the Belks, till the bitter end, great friends there. And the Hiltons provided a lot of support for Up With People. But that dinner party is how the Belks met Disney and how the connection with Pat Boone and John Wayne went to get them on the cover of our album. Stop! I want to interrupt here to clarify a point direct from Mrs. Belk herself. So that party at the Frawley's house was actually attended by Pat Boone, where an Up With People cast performed for him. The Belks met Disney later at a party hosted by Marvin LeRoy, the producer famous for A Wizard of Oz. John Wayne was at one of the two parties, but the memory on that one's a little unclear, so we'll leave that one up in the air for now. But that's your clarification. Back to the main event. So much so were those ties between the Frawleys that we wrote a song about them and included it on this album. This little box here on the back talks about the fact that this song is dedicated to the Frawleys and their importance to Up With People at the time. So that's a really strong connection, right? And in fact, Up With People, for those of you who don't know, used to write a song for every city that we visited. Sponsors could get songs. We wrote songs on the fly, on the road, all the time. So this wasn't that atypical back then. We hit number 113 on the Billboard charts, at least 113, possibly higher, and we had done that by October of '66, right? That was the Billboard Top LPs chart. There's cool things about this album too. Having printed so many of them, they changed over time, and we can pay attention to some of those facts by looking at the back. So Glenn Close was a member of Up With People in the early days, and she had her singing group, the Green Glen Singers, along with Kathy Green. But there was an unfortunate typo on the back of many of the first albums, and they transposed some letters, and so she becomes Gleen Close. If you pay attention, right in here, it's the Gleen Close Singers. Not very favorable look for us with a typo on our own album. As the organization aged, we started to discount these albums, and some of them might have this discount sticker here that you can get it for only $2. And on the back, we actually covered up the whole passage about Patrick Frawley as we moved away from those connections with our founding organization, MRA. We just covered that up to sell this new book that we've got going on here, Born to Upturn the World. That was our story that we were selling there in that orange sticker. There were other changes along the way as well. So the early albums didn't have anything printed up there, but eventually we started distinguishing whether they were stereo or mono or not. And so you can look at that up in the corner there. And then on the back, things changed drastically, right? So after 68, as Up With People incorporated as their own organization, you can notice that there's some changes here in the record. Number one, we're no longer at our old Morrill Rearmament address of 833 Flower Street. We've moved to a P.O. box in LA. So that changed. Also, you're going to see here, we have the same soloists on the back, but Charles Woodard becomes Wardell Woodard. So we moved from his given name to his preferred name on the back of the album. So that's a change there. We're going to see that the text here on the back is totally different from what was originally printed that talks about the importance of MRA and Sing Out. That's all gone, and we just talk about the Up With People explosion. Lots of cool things about this album. We're just talking about the start of it. But you know what? We wouldn't be leaving out the different formats that we printed it in as well. So I believe that this is the only Up With People album that was released on reel-to-reel commercially. So for all you young kids, before cassettes and before all you middle-aged people, before 8-tracks, we did reel-to-reel. This is the only one that I know about. It's 3¼ inches per second, which is a level of quality. And so we did not release it in super high quality, but we sold it anyway. So 1101 is probably our most known album. If you want your own copy, you can go to any used record store or eBay or Discogs. Check out the internet. I think it's really worth grabbing yourself a copy because it is the very beginning of our very storied history. And I hope that you join me in future episodes as we talk about the rest of the albums. I hope that you enjoyed this episode of Relive It Live from Nathan's Basement and that you learned something as well. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, please comment below about what your favorite part was. You can also check out our website, reliveitlive.com, for more information and episodes of this video series, to learn more about the Up With People International Alumni Association, and also to get a copy of Mr. Belk's new memoir. We're looking for your information and memories about how the Up With People album series was created. So at reliveitlive.com, please feel free to submit your stories about your involvement so that we have information for future episodes. We'll see you next time on Relive It Live from Nathan's Basement.